People do not know what we physicians have to go through. And we physicians don't talk to each other. And when we're going through, we think that we're the only person. And because we are type A people who have been driven and we're used to being on top, when we fail or when we have the perception of failure, we internalize it. And I just want people to know that it's not you. Your job sucks. It ain't you. You are not the problem. Your job sucks. Maybe you got a bad contract. Maybe your boss is You do not need anger management. You do not need therapy.
Welcome to the Licensed to Live show, where professionals, doctors, champions, VIPs, attorneys, and those in public office discover strategies that help you restart and gain what is lost when you find yourself accused. If another has doubted your integrity, questioned your credentials, or caused your actions to come under scrutiny, you are in the right place. On the other hand, if you have never felt the knot in the pit of your stomach when legal papers are served, the heartbreak of disappointing your family when the lock clicks shut on handcuffs, or had to appear before a board of review, then be aware, the longer you serve, the more likely you are to find yourself under the microscope of those who judge. Prepare yourself for this uncomfortable possibility. Now, here's your host, Dr. Jarrett Patton.
Welcome to this episode of Licensed to Live. My name is Dr. Jarrett, and I'm your host for our journey together today and every day you choose to listen to this show. If you or anyone you know has been dissed by the healthcare system, please invite them to join us along this journey. Just go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts, and subscribe to the Licensed to Live show. And while you're there, please rate this episode and give me honest feedback so I make sure I provide you with the most up-to-date information about career and life changes. When I say dissed, I mean disengaged, like, this medicine thing is not what it's cracked up to be. Too much paperwork, too many administrators telling me what to do, or I just don't have enough time with my patients. Dissatisfied, like, I don't feel like I'm living up to my full potential. This career just isn't fulfilling. Disgruntled, like, being a doctor has taken way too much of my life away. I'm in debt up to my eyeballs, and I'm too upset because my work life is too full and my real life is left barren. Or disenfranchised, like I was when I had my medical license temporarily suspended. This show is not for those physicians who are happy and fulfilled in their clinical career, who have never had a setback in life. If you're in this category, make sure you tell a friend to listen to this podcast. Today, we'll be talking with Dr. Stephanie Freeman, an intensive care physician, a best-selling author, founder of Freeman Medical Consulting Group, and a Locum Tenens physician. We will discuss locums as a career lifestyle and how it can improve your life. Before we get started, I would like to let you know about a special opportunity coming up. We have opened a few additional spots in the Licensed to Live one-on-one coaching program. This 3-month program is designed to help you refresh and restart your career so that you have a better life. This transformational plan will help you have the credibility, confidence, courage to make that leap into a new career that you desire. There's only a few spots remaining for this New Year's special, so make sure you make an appointment with me to see if you qualify. You can go to timewithdrjarrett.com. That's time with, spell out the word doctor, JA2RSE1T.com. Welcome to the License to Live show, Dr. Stephanie. I'm so happy to have you on the show to discuss this important topic that so many people have asked me questions about. I wanted to bring in an expert to this show to discuss other career options that people often misunderstand. So welcome.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Jarrett. It is my pleasure and honor to be able to spend some time with you on this wonderful podcast.
Well, thanks for giving me your time. And fire starters out there, Dr. Stephanie is so busy with all of her ventures. She's actually in the hospital right now. So if you hear some beeps or a pager going off, Don't worry, it's not yours. It could be Dr. Stephanie's. So we're just putting that out there right now from the beginning as we will go on with this interview here today. So I have to say, this time of year must be very special for you as an alum of the University of Alabama, with their football team always doing so well. But I also noticed you got your MBA from Auburn, and that's an interesting combination, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So tell me, what led you to become an ICU physician?
Well, I have always, of course, loved medicine. And I didn't always know that I wanted to be an ICU physician, really and truly, because I grew up in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, around the University of Alabama. They have a really strong College of Community Health Sciences and a real strong emphasis on rural health medicine, rural health care, primary care. So I came up through that system, and I was really thinking that I was going to be a family practice doctor. However, when they say mama knows best, my mom was like, no, honey, that's not you. She's like, that's not you, Stephanie. You're not going to do primary care. You're not going to do family practice. That is not you. She says, I see you being an emergency medicine doctor. I do not see you doing primary care. She's like, that's not your personality. So lo and behold, mama is right. So I did my internal medicine residency at Wake Forest University Baptist Medical Center. And I love the intensive care unit, but I thought I was going to be a hospitalist because I love the hospital. I like the way the hospital works. I like the way that you have control over things in the hospital. And I remember my last ICU shift as a second year medical resident, whatever it was, the time frame had already passed for me to start applying for fellowships for when I finished, because I had applied for and gotten a geriatrics fellowship. So I was going to be a hospitalist and round in nursing homes as well. But I love the intensive care unit. And I specifically hearing that voice from God say, you need to do critical care. And at first I was shied away from critical care because I thought you had to do pulmonary in addition to critical care. So I talked to one of my attendees and he was like, absolutely not. You can just do a straight critical care program. You can go to University of Pittsburgh, and he named some other programs that I could go to. And when I found out that you could do straight critical care and didn't have to do pulmonary, I bought in 100% and I never looked back. And it is that calling. It is that meant, I remember the moment hearing so clear. You know how they say God speaks to us sometimes in that still small voice. I remember that. And so I go back to that when I question my life. When I question, why am I doing this? I'm like, okay, God, I know I'm supposed to do this. And because I know I'm supposed to do this, because you told me to do this, you're going to make a way for me to do this. So that's why I am here as a critical care doctor.
Credentials verified.
Wow, that's a great story. So two things I take from that. Well, number one, trust in God. But number two, listen to your mama. And
listen
if you
to your mother.
You're going to be fine.
Because I think so many times we as physicians and we as people need to realize that there are people who are close to us who recognize things about us that we don't recognize about ourselves. And then also and likewise with your career, there are people who are close to us who recognize things about our career, who recognize things about our job that we don't recognize. And if we listen to them and they say, why are you working so much? And they say that your work schedule does not make sense. I have had my mother tell me your work schedule is not sustainable. Why are they working you like that? And sometimes it takes people who are close to you, but outside of this situation looking in, to kind of plant those seeds to say, I know you're a doctor, but this isn't right. And that is another thing that I think that we should all take into consideration.
Fire starters, I mean, you're hearing it right off the bat. Dr. Stephanie is not playing around today. You have to listen and you have to just follow with your desire. And all too often, people get torn with, they think they should be doing this or they want to do that. And they walk around and they're just not happy at all. And they keep forcing themselves down the same road, trying hospital after hospital or going from place to place, thinking the place will make the difference. But it's really more deep than that. And it's really deep within. And that's where people get lost sometimes. So I'm glad that you clarified that for us right off the bat, Dr. Stephanie.
Yes.
Well, tell me this. You've done so many things with your career so far. Have you ever been dissed in healthcare?
I was dissed in healthcare. I believe I was dissed in healthcare from the beginning. And I think a lot of us, when we look back on it, have our stories. I have our stories in which coming through medical school, not so much, but even during residency, when we, especially as physicians of color, have to deal with some of the microaggressions and sometimes the macroaggressions, not from patients, but from the people in our programs. The harsh subjective evaluations, the subjective evaluations about a nurse just not liking you, stuff like that. Have to deal with that a lot.
Oh, no, not another test.
But I specifically felt dissed in medicine because I felt like in medicine, after I got out, I trained at the University of Pittsburgh, which is the guru for critical care medicine. The University of Pittsburgh came up with the specialty of critical care medicine. So that's why I trained. We ran everything. We're all about critical care right now. And I wanted to be an intensivist who practiced medicine in a community. So I took my zeal and my passion for evidence-based critical care medicine into a community hospital. That was my first job. And it was not well received because it represented a paradigm shift. And so instead of the medical community advocating for, evidence-based medicine as a way to improve the system and how they delivered quality critical care in their program, I ran up against a lot of political resistance. Several years later, I come to find out it didn't have so much to do with me as it did with the group that I worked with and the desire for other physicians in the group to limit the power of the group that I was working for. So they didn't dislike me. They disliked what I represented, and they disliked what my employer was trying to do. So that was my first experience of feeling dissed in medicine because I had no idea about the political structure. I had no idea about the local politics and how so much stuff went into the practice of medicine and delivery of care. And it had very little to do with the practice of evidence-based medicine and more of anything to do with the practice of regional and local politics and hospital-wide politics. So that was my first very bad experience with that. I had to end up leaving that job after they did not renew my contract. But because I've always been a hustler, I've always had, moonlighting gigs on the side, and I've always done stuff on the side. So I was able just to transition over into doing moonlighting. I was like, okay, well, this didn't work out. I'm going to just go right down the street because I've been working right down the street for the last 2 years. So I'll just give them a call, pick up some shifts there and figure out what I want to do.
You bring up some great points here because I think going through the medical training, going in through residencies, fellowships, and so on and so forth, they do a great job teaching the importance of evidence-based medicine and science and the art of medicine. Even you get a lot of that, but you don't have any idea what you may be walking into with the politics of any given situation. So we are very ill-equipped to deal with some of these things, especially when we first come out. So that must have been very tough for you.
It was traumatic. I remember, laying on my living room floor in tears because when you get the phone call, they're like, oh, we don't need you anymore. Just don't come back. You're like, wait a minute, I got a mortgage. I just bought this house. Am I going to get paid? What is going on here? So you're devastated. You feel like a failure and you don't know whether or not you're going to go broke because you don't know whether or not these people who were so eager to hire you 9 months ago, now they're so quick to sacrifice you. You don't know if they're going to, do the right thing by you. So I remember just laying on my, living room floor in tears, crying out to God because I didn't know what to do because we're not taught about how to get a job. We're not taught about negotiating job contracts. We're not taught about the political structure of the hospital. We're not taught about what to do when your job ends. We're not taught any of that as physicians. So you go through all this training, you accumulate this debt, you you finally think you're going to settle down and be a real adult, and then the rug gets snatched under you and you don't know where to turn to. You don't know where to go. You feel like a failure and you're embarrassed. So that's where I was.
So your confidence is crushed. You're feeling embarrassed. You're not used to failure because, well, in order to get through the medical system, you have to succeed. There's really no room for failure. So this is like one of the first times you've really felt all of these emotions at once and something you've worked so hard for. And fire starters, I have to tell you that this is one of those things that happens to people all the time. You heard Dr. Stephanie say it. You feel alone. You feel neglected. You feel embarrassed. You feel hurt. You feel like a failure. And a lot of times this doesn't have anything to do with you as a person, you as a physician, or anything within yourself. It actually has to do with circumstances. In this case, it's politics. In other cases, it may be other things. So you can't continue to beat yourself up. And in License to Live, the primer to rebuilding your life after your career is shattered, we discussed things to do regarding your confidence all the time and how to bring that up and bring yourself back. And this is exactly what Dr. Stephanie did in order to get her career back on. So kudos to you for being able to figure that out early, Dr. Stephanie, and know exactly what you had to do, because you had backup plans. And although it was devastating, you were taking another plan of action.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I always try to tell physicians, and I always try to encourage physicians, is always have that thing on the side that you can do. Always have that side hustle, that thing on the side that you can do. So if this main job doesn't work out, you always got that thing on the side you can do. And it's just so important in order to have that. And I think the other reason that's so important is because we need to put our careers in place. We need to put our jobs in place. They are not our lives. They are a part of our lives. And when we get to the point where we stop putting more value on them than needs to happen, then I think that puts us in a much better position to stand up for ourselves, to stand up for our families, to advocate for us, because our job is a job. You can get another job.
So true. So true, Dr. Stephanie. You can get another job. A job is a job. You heard it here on the License to Live show, folks. A job is a job. And if you can have some other jobs or some other things that keep you afloat, then do that. And I would like to congratulate you on your best-selling book, Locum Tenens, Your Questions Answered, a concise guide for physicians considering locum's work. Tell us what inspired you to write this book.
Yeah, this is an ebook, and I first decided to write that book is because I was getting so many questions on Facebook when I was participating in Facebook groups about doing locums. And I think people were starting off locums all wrong. They were taking the wrong types of assignments. They had no idea what they were doing. They were working for too low of a rate. And I said, listen, this has got to stop. And everybody kept saying, Stephanie, you need to write a book. Stephanie, you need to write a book. Stephanie, you need to write a book. So I wrote this first ebook because I wanted it just to be a source of information that people could read very quickly, and that would just help them to get started on the process. See, for me, I had never heard of locums. And the way I got started was because after I lost my first job, and I have always had an entrepreneurial bend. And so I wanted to start this other kind of side gig. I was doing this other stuff. And my mom was like, well, Stephanie, you need to go back to school and get your MBA. No, listening to mama. And I said, okay, I'll go back to school, get my MBA. So I enrolled in the executive MBA program at Auburn. But meanwhile, I just signed up for this $50,000 MBA program. I got to pay for it. And I was at the Society of Critical Care Medicine conference, and I saw this big sign of this hospital, and I started talking to some locums recruiters, and the rest is history. I had no idea what locums was, but they were like, listen, we'll pay you X amount of money. We'll provide travel. And I started doing the math. I was like, okay, sure. I guess I was, naive. They say ignorance was bliss, but it worked out well for me. And so that's kind of how I got started with everything. And I wrote the book because I wanted to give other people a leg up. I didn't want them to have to go through things for 5 years and 6 years before they figured out the system. So it's like I said, let me take 15 top questions about locum tenens and just put it in a plain, easy, simple to read format so that people will have a nice, easy reference guide so that they can get started further along on the road than I was.
Wow, that's great. And that's selfless, because people come to me all the time asking about locums. They don't understand what it is or how it could become a career. Oftentimes they think something lesser of it, as a matter of fact. So I'm glad you got that out there, because some people think that locums are for physicians that maybe have credibility deficiencies or credentialing problems. Why do you feel that it is not like that?
You know what? In times past, it used to be, but now so many places depend on locums in order to survive. There are some emergency departments that are only staffed with locums doctors. There are some hospitalist programs that would not exist if it weren't for locums doctors. And so now the quality of locums is so great, and we even have studies to prove it. And it's because locums doctors provide a valuable solution to the healthcare crisis of the physician shortage. And as a matter of fact, our credentials have to be stellar, because I'm going through credentialing processes every 2 to 3 months. You know, every time I apply for a medical license, every time I apply for hospital privileges, they are looking through my privileges, my credentials with the fine tooth comb. So, you know, in 2018, I'm getting questions about the 30-day gap in my CV from back in 2004. That's how much they are looking through your credentials. You know, they're pulling up, you know, they're getting primary source verification. They're pulling up your FCVS. They're pulling up your national practitioner database things. Now the locums doctors are top notch, because we just do this because that's what we want to do. And the hospitals need our services. Now, I will say this, it took me years to not be embarrassed about the fact that I was a full-time locums. Years. Because I felt a certain failure to the point where I was like, well, I can't keep a permanent job. But then I was scared to keep a permanent job because I'd had a bad experience. It did something to me because I felt hurt and embarrassed that I got fired from my first job and stuff. For years while I was getting my MBA, I was like, oh yeah, I just do locums. I work as an independent contractor because I'm getting my MBA. That was my excuse. But meanwhile, I was still hurt and I was still scared to pursue another permanent job because I thought there was something wrong with me. And so then when my MBA program was over, I was like, well, the gig's up. So I guess it probably is time for me to get a real job. So I got a real job. And as soon as I got that real job, I said, why did I do this to myself?
You said after all of that, after all the pain, after all the agony, after all the embarrassment you suffered, you said, all right, you forced yourself back and said, I'm going for a regular job. And it just wasn't what you thought it might be.
I was like, why did I do myself like this? And really, when I started looking at my paycheck, because I said, wait a minute, why am I working more and I'm bringing home less? Why do I have less to show for it? You know, I moved for this job. I was unable to sell my house. So now I had 2 house notes. So the cash flow was coming in less. The hourly rate was less. And the politics were more. I had more at stake. The contract wasn't a great contract. And I'm sitting around here looking at the environment. I was like, Lord, I got to bounce. So I left that job after 9 months. Then I went to another job. I left the frying pan and went into the fire. And that job right there is a whole nother podcast. That's why I wrote my second book, Real World of Medicine, what your professors didn't teach you and your attendings didn't know. So then, okay, I left that job, moved to Houston. I said, okay, I'm going to do locums until I get things settled in Houston. Took another permanent job. And I said to myself, why did I do this again? So after all these years, all these permanent jobs, all these bad experiences, I just had to embrace the fact that I am a locums doctor. And now I wear it as a badge of honor that I can't keep a permanent job. That's like my second tagline. So that's like my second tagline, that I can't keep a permanent job because I'm not permanent job material. I am locums material. But, the key is I had to find what works for me, and I had to settle into that and embrace it, because everything's not for everybody, but something is for you. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here doing what I want to do. And that's why I'm so passionate about exposing other physicians to the possibility of doing locums.
Well, that sums it up, folks. I mean, you hear the amount of credentialing you have to go through, and locums ends up being a lifestyle for many. And it's not something that's lesser than. It's not something that looks like you're practicing substandard medicine. You're actually staying up to date and can go through all of these credentialing all these credentialing committees and med exec committees and get passed through on all these different hospitals in many different states. I mean, how many licenses do you have right now in different states?
I think 12.
So you have a good portion of the country covered as a result of this locums lifestyle. And you guys have to pick up her books, and I will leave links to both of them in the show notes, so you guys have this, because I'm adding to your reading list now, because Dr. Stephanie is so prolific with her writing. But you have to understand that locums is a way of life, and she said it. Everything is not for everybody, and you have to find that niche that works for you, that makes you happy, that works for your career, so that you can advance. And that's what this is all about. Dr. Stephanie, you dropping these jewels for us today, and I appreciate that so much.
Thank you. I just want to be a source of encouragement.
The Comeback.
Because people do not know what we physicians have to go through, and we physicians don't talk to each other. And when we're going through, we think that we're the only person. And because we are type A people who have been driven and we're used to being on top, when we fail or when we have the perception of failure, we internalize it. And I just want people to know that it's not you. Your job sucks. It ain't you. You are not the problem. Your job sucks. Maybe you got a bad contract. Maybe your boss isn't. You do not need anger management. You do not need therapy. Maybe you do from the PTSD you got, but you are not inherently a bad, evil person with a personality disorder. Your job is screwed up. And I just want to encourage people, because that is the corporate mind game that they play on physicians. Have you messed up in the head thinking that you're the problem when they're sitting up in that boardroom strategizing how to get you in line?
There you have it. It is not you. Dr. Stephanie is providing us lots of encouragement. And I know there's some of you guys out there that are hurting and you're beating yourself up over something that happened in your job, but don't do that for everybody else. And you've heard me say it like this on the show before. It is a game, and there are a whole cast of characters that play this game for a living every single day. And because we are physicians and we identify with being a physician, when someone attacks that for any reason, it throws you off and it makes it more difficult for you. Dr. Stephanie, you've blessed us with so much knowledge today. You've given us so many things to think about with both ourselves and our occupations, while keeping in mind it is just a job. Is there anything else you'd like to say to my audience today?
Yes, actually, I want to take the opportunity just to spend a couple of minutes to explain what locums actually is. Locum tenens is Latin for placeholder. So what it is you are a doctor who works on a temporary basis as an independent contractor to help fill in the gaps that are needed. So oftentimes locum tenens doctors are called in to work in situations in which there's a staffing issue. A physician has quit their job, a physician is out on vacation, a physician may be out on sick leave or maternity leave, and they're just short-staffed and they need you to be a placeholder. And so that's what you are. So that is what a locums doctor is. And like I alluded to earlier, it's a huge industry. I mean, locums is a $1 billion industry. And these locums companies make a lot of money because our services are in demand. And there are really opportunities to be a locums provider, a locums physician for really any specialty. There are some hospitals that could not operate if it were not for locums physicians. So I travel all over the country. Because I'm a critical care doctor, I work in shifts. So I work anywhere from 7 days at a time. But a lot of physicians take longer assignments. A lot of physicians are able to find locums or PRN work closer to home. So there are so many opportunities because the need is so great. So I encourage everybody to look into it because I'm a firm believer that you need to have that thing on the side. So even if you have a quote unquote permanent job, and notice I said quote unquote because no job is actually permanent. Read your contract, read your termination clause and see how permanent your job is. But I encourage everybody to have that thing on the side, that PRN job that you can do, some locums work that you can do up the road or down the street or across the corner or in front of your computer, because the opportunities are there. The need is there. And the great thing is the appreciation is there, because when you're in a situation in which there is a dire need for somebody to fill the gap, when a doctor just ups and quits, or they're expanding the program and they need people to fill these shifts, or somebody is out on vacation, or the other doctors in the program are at the brink because they cannot keep working the way they do. When they fly you in and you start working and you and it's like that pressure valve has been released and they're like, we are glad you are here. And the appreciation is there. The pay is there. The flexibility is there. The ability to say, yes, I'll pick up that shift is there. And the ability to say, no, I'm not working is there. So that's what the great thing about locums is: freedom, opportunity, flexibility, and appreciation.
Why wouldn't everybody want to be a locums doc? I just don't understand it now. I'm ready to just flip everything about my script now, and you got me all hyped up about it. Dr. Stephanie, where can people find out more about you?
Well, you can visit me online at www.drstephanieicu.com. I also have a great Facebook group for physicians who are interested in locums and who are doing locums, and it is called Creating Careers in Medicine. So look me up on Facebook, and I am also offering a complimentary copy of my locums ebook, Locum Tenens, Your Questions Answered, and you can find that at bit.ly. Dr. Stephanie Locums ebook. That is DrStephanie Locums, capital EBOOK. Dr. Stephanie Locums ebook. Download your free copy today.
Get that, folks. It is here for you guys, all you fire starters. Go get that free ebook, and all the links will be provided. So don't pull over on the road. Don't do anything. Just once you get a chance to get back to your podcast show notes, go there, click the link, and that copy is yours. Thank you so much, Dr. Stephanie, for being on the show today. You've provided a wealth of knowledge for us, and really you've enlightened us on the locums lifestyle as a career for physicians. So thank you for clarifying so many misconceptions that we tend to hold on to as physicians, because as you said, a job is just a job. You have to have something that will make you happy in your career, and locums definitely has done that for you. Thank you for being on the show.
Final judgment. Licensed to live.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Remember, fire starters, if you or anyone you know has been disengaged, dissatisfied, disgruntled, or disenfranchised with healthcare, please invite them to join us along this journey. simply go to your favorite podcast distributor and subscribe to Licensed to Live. And while you are there, please rate this episode and give me honest feedback so I make sure I provide you with the most up-to-date information about career changes and life challenges. Don't forget to pre-qualify for the License to Live one-on-one coaching program by making an appointment now at www.timewithdrjarrett.com. That's time with, spell out the word doctor, J-A, 2 R's, E, 1 T.com. See you next time.
No matter how disheartening the moment of accusation sounds, how deep the pain of immobilization stabs, or how bleak your future looks, no one can take away your license to live. Keep Dr. Jarrett's expertise handy and unlock your future. Go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or another podcast player and subscribe right now to Licensed to Live. See you next time.